Hiya! We're back. We have so many things to go over. We have unsponsored water. It's gonna be a good day, my friends. I'm gonna try and put timestamps in. I'm gonna try and keep it a little organized. However, with all of these changes, I'm gonna be a little bit more rambly than usual. It's just gonna have to be that way. I'm sorry. There's so many things and like things changing that require knowledge of other things changing. I will try my best, I promise, but you know how I am. Right off the bat, a couple of disclaimers. One, I do not have alpha yet. If you're looking for content of like, here's how it plays, here's the gameplay, here's an animation or whatever, don't have alpha access. I can't show you. I'm sorry. I'm just going off patch notes. This will be more podcast style. I will go over it visually, but, you know, I'm working with what I have. Part 2. I'm going to try and refrain from zeroing in on numbers. It's day 1, day 2 of alpha at this point, and I frankly don't really care if it's 40 energy or 45 on Darkest Night, and I don't care if it's 60% increased damage or if it's 80 or if it's 300. I assume all of these numbers are basically placeholder. That is kind of the states that you need to go into headspace-wise when you're going into alpha. None of these numbers are set in stone, and they will change. Especially when we talk about energy, I want everyone to keep an open mind about it. For example, when they added Sanguine Blades to the 10.2 PTR, and we had to test that, Sanguine Blades went anywhere from 1 energy per tick to 10 energy per tick. They tried all sorts of things. So, energy might look bad, might look good, depending how you look at it. However, keep an open mind. Numbers will change, the gameplay will feel smooth, try to keep it conceptual. Okay? Okay. So, with that out of the way, disclaimer-wise, I want to start with an overview. Running it down, you don't want to watch this, however god-awful long video that Whisper is going to yamp about. What are we doing? Okay. Super fast TLDR. Deathstalker doesn't require stealth anymore. You can apply it via any garrote, stealth or non-stealth garrote. You can still move the mark with garrotes to targets that don't have it. However, you cannot apply a mark anymore if you have a Darkest Night. So, for example, at the end of an M+ pack, if you get a Darkest Night, going into the next pack, you cannot apply a Deathstalker's mark if you have that Darkest Night up. For Fatebound, they removed the Vanish stuff. They changed the capstone, so now it's just a random uptime thing. There's no requirements for flipping X amount of times in a row. It's streamlined. Fatebound is also good in AoE through some talent swaps that they have. On the class tree, Thistletea no longer gives mastery, so it's just completely auto-proc, let the energy happen. Cold Blood is gone. It's replaced by a passive effect. Aside from that, the class tree hasn't seen too much change, all things considered. There is a new talent, however, that adds your haste percent to the effect of Slice and Dice, which means that you're double dipping haste, because haste already increases attack speed, but now it's also going to increase the attack speed effect of Slice and Dice. So auto attacks are getting double dipped on haste. Haste is probably a good stat. Then on the Spec tree, there's a lot of changes. Summarizing the kind of theme of it all is less focus on stealth, more focus on Envenom and Caustic Spatter, and a reset back to sort of a Mirdrasil era pooling. Energy is going to be a core concept that you need to manage in both single target and AoE on Assassination, and you will try to chain Envenoms back to back, as in casting Envenoms during the Envenom buff that you have. During that time, the Envenom gets a bunch of extra effects, and at the end of it, you're going to get a burst of energy back that allows you to go back into the next set of Envenom chains. So, managing your energy, going from 100 to 0 back up to 100, right? Knowing when to send your Envenoms and when to hold. That's going to be sort of the min-max of Assassination, or the core, skill of Assassination. Other than that, Crimson Tempest, other big change. Crimson Tempest is now a generator. It is a Fan of Knives style generator. Hits all targets, generates the same amount of combo points, however it costs more, and they baked in Indiscriminate Carnage bleed spreading onto Crimson Tempest. What that means is you're going to pick between either Fan of Knives or Crimson Tempest as your AoE generator, your AoE combo point generator. Crimson Tempest will spread your bleeds, Fan of Knives will do more damage, and you will dump with Envenom. That is it. The other thing is that bleed spreading is only through Crimson Tempest at this point. So Indiscriminate Carnage, for example, is completely gone. Master Assassin is gone. Stealth effects in general are gone. The only thing that remains is Improved Garrote. So you can still vanish for Improved Garrote and then spread that with Crimson Tempest. However, the big pain points of like, oh, I need a re-stealth, those aren't a thing anymore. And you can... the AoE rotation, let me back up a little bit. The AoE rotation is essentially get bleeds up on your main target, spread them, and then fill with Envenom for caustic spatter damage. That is sort of the baseline AoE damage. I also have infographics for some of this stuff to help explain it a little bit better later on when we get to those sections. But that's sort of the TLDR. So with that out of the way, I'm going to be going through it section by section, patch notes first. Then I have the talent trees pulled up. These are sort of rough. We do have Apex talents to go over. I can go over some ideas for example trees. I have a paint up here, and then I also have an infographic stuff for AoE rotation and chaining. So we can go over that. All of this info is also pinned in Ravenholt. If you don't want to listen to me, that is okay. You can go view the information there. Otherwise, let's get right into it. Starting with patch notes. So, Hero Talents Deathstalker. There's a couple of new talents here. Unshakable Drive. This was actually already baked into the main part of Deathstalker's Mark. So, Deathstalker's Mark, when you consume it, it increases the damage of your next ambush or mutilate. That's still a thing. It's just now a talent now. So they pulled it out of the Mark, made it a talent. Deathstalker's Mark has been updated. Garrote applies 3 stacks of Deathstalker's Mark to your target. So no more stealth requirements, no more ambush, no more nothing. It's just Garrote. Doesn't have to be a stealth Garrote, can be a normal Garrote. There is some weird wording that people are getting tripped up on. It says, unless Deathstalker's Mark or Darkest Night are already active. What this means is that Deathstalker's Mark on your target is already active, or Darkest Night on you is already active. This does not mean any Deathstalker's Mark is active. You can still move the mark around perfectly fine, just like you can right now. You just need to Garrote the new target, right? You have to think about this from the perspective of your character hitting a target. So if your target has Deathstalker's Mark, you can't reapply it. If your target does not have Deathstalker's Mark and you do not have Darkest Night, then you can obviously reapply. So then you can Garrote. So moving is still fine, nothing worrisome there. It works the exact same as it does now. It's just simply Garrote, right? That is the difference. Okay. Darkest Night has been updated. You only need 5 or more combo points. So no more minigame of trying to hit maximum combo points. You just continue doing your 5 combo point finishers. Perfectly fine. Otherwise, it's the same thing. Clear the Witnesses isn't its own damage now. It increases Fan of Knives by 50%. Now, this is important later on. Crimson Tempest is an alternative to Fan of Knives. It's a generator now. So you have to be very careful with Fan of Knives wording versus Crimson Tempest wording. These are not the same abilities anymore in terms of, like, they do the same thing, but talent-wise, they are decoupled, right? So things that say Fan of Knives are only Fan of Knives, and that has to be very specific, even though they're both AoE generators that do essentially the same thing. Fan of Knives will do more damage, so just keep that in the back of your head. Corrupt the Blood also doesn't do its own thing. It's the same thing as Clear the Witnesses. It's just rupture damage now. So instead of having its own damage source, it's just increased rupture damage. Plain, simple, super easy. Bait and Switch also caught a little bit of a numerical nerf. Symbolic Victory has been updated. Kingsbane increases the damage of your next 2 Envenoms. This is something I may have left out of the TLDR because I forgot. But Shiv is completely gone from your rotation. Doesn't exist anymore. So if you're trying to do anything Shiv related, it probably got attached to Kingsbane. That includes things like Echoing Reprimand, or Supercharger, I guess. Old habit die hard. So Supercharger's on Kingsbane, Symbolic Victory's on Kingsbane, all this stuff's on Kingsbane now. But that's it. Small change, but very important change to Deathstalker's Mark. Fatebound got some bigger changes because it sucks in AoE really bad. And the developer note does say that. A nice changes to Fatebound are intended to make its benefits more reliable in different types of content. So they are aware, and they did fix that because it is bad. They also changed Fateful Ending, all or nothing benefit. This is the capstone, so the capstone is also being reworked. Okay, so the new capstone lucky coin. Every 7 coin flips, you keep a coin. It bends for 15 seconds, whatever. So this is no longer 7 coin flips in a row. This is just every 7 flips total. You get a 15-second buff that increases your agility. And it also increases the effects and bonuses from your Fatebound coins. So if your Fatebound Heads coin, for example, was giving you, say, 20% increased damage, this would now be 30. Cool. Your coin flips are also 15% more likely to match the same face as last flip, so you get to increase your chain better, right? Coin flips are not counted towards finding a lucky coin while you have a lucky coin, so you can't just permanently have this up if you keep flipping and flipping and flipping. This is a uptime effect that comes up and down. It's ebb and flow, whatever. It's here sometimes. The uptime's like maybe 30 to 40%, just off of a rough estimate. But we'll see as, you know, I get alpha access. Also, a new talent that gives Envenom a chance to flip 3 coins. These don't match each other, so it's not like Double Jeopardy. These are just 3 random coins, so they could match each other. They could not match each other. In general, the whole matching thing is severely reduced. They also have a new talent that gives energy every time you flip a coin, which means, you know, Envenom flips 3 Fatebound coins, and you gain a bunch of energy back. Cool. Then the 4-set bonus had to be updated because they changed the capstone, and so you don't have that effect anymore. This is just a sort of pre-patch planning sort of thing. Don't need to worry about this. They changed the defensive trait from Leech to a flat restore. Whatever. And then Tempted Fate doesn't have the crit requirement anymore. This is the other defensive node where you had a chance equal to your crit rate. This is just a flat 30% now. Delivered Doom. This was the big pain point for Tails coins, why they didn't do damage in AoE. Instead now, Envenom just deals more damage when they consume Fire more combo points, which is always. So Envenom just deals more damage. Fate Intertwined also changed. This is the Envenom cleaving effect, where it either hits your main target or it cleaves to nearby enemies, right? But it didn't hit your main target, so it didn't caustic. That whole shebang. That's now been updated. Caustic Spatter now just does 10% additional damage. So good AoE buff here. These 2 talents together pretty much fix all of Fatebound's AoE issues, considering that the Fatebound coin also spatters. It interacts with Caustic Spatter. So these 2 talents, plus the fact that the coin is not nerfing itself anymore, Fatebound's going to be perfectly fine to play in AoE. There's some other stuff here, right? Like the stuff moving, whatever. Now, quick side notes on Fatebound versus Deathstalker. The way this looks to me right now, regardless of the numbers, is that Deathstalker still has singular focus, and it has its niche on funnels and sort of having one big Envenom every now and then, right? So you have these moments of like Deathstalker can spike a little bit, whereas and also prio damage and like funnel back in AoE situations, whereas Fatebound is a little bit more RNG, right? It can have those same spikes, but you need to roll a bunch of coins first. You need to flip a bunch of coins on the same face. Otherwise, it's very consistent, spread out damage. It's just very passive, and as you're doing your normal rotation, you just get bonuses, right? So there's no thought process with Fatebound. However, it is just generic, you do more things, whereas Deathstalker is a little more targeted, a little more focused, a little more, it requires a little bit more thought process, right? With having to hit the same target, picking your target, making sure that you get your garrote up on that target to get the mark effects, etc., etc. It's not much harder after the garrote change, but there is that push and pull still of Fatebound is probably the better choice for generic AoE and like raid situations. But if there is a situation where you do want the funnel damage, you do want the prio damage, and you can abuse stuff like Darkest Night to do some big AoE burst with that big Envenom, in those situations, Deathstalker would pull ahead. That is sort of the tension that is between the two hero talents. Otherwise, they seem to do kind of the same thing. Everything is Envenom these days. We're going to skip Trickster because it is an Assassination video. And then we have some class talents. So this is the rework to Cold Blood. Cold Blood doesn't exist anymore. Now it's a passive and critically striking with attack that generates combo points has a 20% chance to increase the crit chance of your next finishing move by 100%. So essentially, if you Fan of Knives or Mutilate, you have a chance to make your next Envenom a guaranteed crit. That's pretty neat. I don't know how this works with Rupture. I would assume it doesn't, because in the past, like Master Assassin and stuff didn't work with Rupture. But if this doesn't work with Rupture, then would it eat the effect? Would it not eat the effect? Like, there's some question marks in my head around this. But most of the time, this is just going to be Envenom. The other question mark here is critically striking with an attack. Is this one check? Or is this a check such as, like, Seal Fate, right? Because if it were a check like Seal Fate, that would mean that in big AoE you always get this. That seems crazy, right? But you are critically striking with an attack. So it kind of depends how it's all implemented. Obviously, when I get alpha, when there's more testing available, I will do follow-up videos, follow-up streams, and all that stuff. Right now, the interpretation is that this checks once per attack, so one time, no double hits on Mutilate, no multi-hits on Fan of Knives, and you just have a flat 20% chance on the cast of the ability to then increase the damage of your Envenom by giving an automatic crit. So, a lot of question marks, but that's generally how that reads. Swift Slasher, this is just Slice and Dice double dipping Haste now. So, Haste already increases attack speed, Slice and Dice increases attack speed, Slice and Dice is increased by Haste, so now you're double dipping Haste. More attacks. Alacrity also doesn't have an uptime effect anymore, this is just flat Haste now, so simplifying things, that is sort of the general gist of the entire expansion. And then because of no Shiv, Supercharger now activates from Kingsbane. Cool. Acrobatic Strikes, the old auto attacks deal more damage, that got moved to the Outlaw Tree, by the way. So Swift Slasher takes the place of that. And we will go over that more when we get the talent trees themselves. Now, going to Assassination, I will read this paragraph out loud, because I think that this is a very important thing to understand context-wise. Assassination has seen numerous changes in Midnight to focus on its core damage over time maintenance and energy management gameplay. We've removed a number of special case abilities, uses from its rotation, such as applying Caustic Spatter with Mutilate, and reduced the number of abilities used in its cooldown windows. We've updated its AoE gameplay to remove the need to enter stealth to apply bleeds to multiple targets. You now periodically reapply Garrote and Rupture and use the new Crimson Tempest to spread them to nearby enemies. There have been multiple updates to its hero talents as well to make them play well within Assassination's rotation. We've added an element of energy management and timing. Assassination rogues are deliberate fighters, and choosing when to spend energy is an important part of their gameplay. There are strong new rewards for maintaining unbroken streaks of Envenom, so you want to bank energy, then stretch every Envenom to its limit to keep the pressure on your targets. So Envenom chaining is back the same way that it was in Emirdrasil, similar at least. They buffed a lot of the effects regarding energy management, regarding Envenom's like chaining effect, like casting Envenom during Envenom. I know there's Apex talents on the screen, but I'm actually going to skip those. I think those are better served as coming after the changes, right? So we'll talk about the class and the spec changes first, and then go back to the Apex talents. I'm going to skip over these for now. These are the spec tree, right? So your energy regeneration is increased by 30%. This is the same thing as Vigor. This does not increase the effects of, say, Dashing Scoundrel or Venomous Wounds. This is simply baseline energy regeneration. It works the same way as Vigor. So this is essentially 3 energy per second. Baseline is 10. Obviously, Haste changes this as well, and Haste is looking to be a pretty good stat, so keep that in mind. There's also some flat increases here, so like there's a crit chance here. Garrote lasts 4 seconds longer. This is useful in M+ when you have, for example, an improved Garrote out, but also because of the rework to Crimson Tempest, which we'll get to, this is generally going to give you more Garrotes. So if you need more AoE, having a longer Garrote's better. Then there's Finish the Job. This sort of solves the issue of Deathmark not being a good cooldown in AoE, especially for the bleed build that we've had in Season 3 now. Deathmark doesn't do anything in AoE, right? Duplicating bleeds on your target is great for prio damage, but you're not actually getting a noticeable increase in AoE at all. Now, with this talent, all damage you deal is increased by 10% while Deathmark is active, so just pressing the button allows you to get a solid burst of increased damage. Some other new talents like Secondary Poisoning. This completely removes all poison-related questions that you might have. Instead of having to, like, tab Mutilates onto 2 targets, or worrying about, like, on Soul Hunters, your poison's expiring because you have 3 targets, but one of them's far away, but the bleed is lasting longer than the poisons, right? This just simply says, when you attack, you have a chance to strike a nearby enemy for, like, to poison them. So, in AoE, you have Fan of Knives. In Cleave, you have Weapon Poisoning. Or Secondary Poisoning, sorry. You auto-attack, apply poisons everywhere. It's really that easy. No poison thought required ever. It's just passive. Fully passive now with Secondary Poisoning, even in 2-target, 3-target cleave situations. So that's really great. They also removed poisons from the base nameplates. So keep that in mind. They don't want it tracked at all. Then there's just a simple rupture damage increase. And then there's some Kingsbane related stuff. So like Regicide's Reward, when Kingsbane ends, gain haste for every 5 stacks of increased Kingsbane damage, decreasing by 2% every 2 seconds. This is essentially like the old Flagellation. And with Kingsbane stacking to 50, this is 20% haste, and it'll decrease by 2% every 2 seconds. So you get an average of 10% haste over 20 seconds. Not bad. It's kind of okay, especially if you play Deathstalker. You still have Lingering Darkness, so you get some increased haste during Lingering Darkness. That could be a cool sort of like double thing. You get increased damage and increased haste. It's not bad. Then you have this as a choice node, these 2 talents. So you either pick that applying Envenom while Envenom is active increases all damage you deal by 5%. That's pretty cool. This is just old, elaborate planning, but with a bunch of other changes coming to the spec, this is now more impactful, and you will want this more than before, because Envenom uptime is going to be difficult to play around. Maybe not difficult, but you definitely have to think about it. The alternative to that choice node is applying Envenom while Envenom is active restores 1 combo point. This is probably the like early expansion talent, right? Like Season 1, going into Season 2, you probably take this simply to keep your chain of Envenoms going a little easier. And when you would then eventually have enough crit chance and you have enough haste going into like Season 3, for example, that scaling that occurs at the end of the expansion, you probably want to swap back to this, because then you don't need the combo points anymore and you instead take the extra damage. That's kind of the vibe that I get from this. One of these will definitely be stronger than the other. It's really hard to balance effects like this, because one combo point is either really bad or really good. And if you do it to like 2, that is a significant increase, right? Applying Envenom while Envenom is active restores 2 combo points would be crazy. So, like, changing the numbers on Poisoner's Drive is really difficult, and it's really hard for just in general to get the tuning right. They either have to tune Inspiring Strike to match Poisoner's Drive, or there's going to be a standout winner between these 2 choice nodes. Just kind of how it has to work. Deadly Momentum is another crit buff thing. It's just you have a chance to get extra crit, whatever. Venomous Wounds has been updated. Now this requires a little bit of context, but this is a huge change in all content, including M+, especially in M+. Venomous Wounds was cut in half. So instead of 8, it's 4. But additionally, you get reduced energy gain for bleeds beyond the first. What this means, essentially, is that Venomous Wounds is now a full quarter of what it is on live. Cut it in half with the 8 to 4, and then in AoE, cut it in half again. That is roughly the energy gain from Venomous Wounds. It is a 75% nerf in AoE. That is really, really scary. I'm just gonna be honest, like, numbers aside, I know that numbers can change and stuff. This is a scary change. It's just what it is. It's just scary. Anytime you mess with the energy income of Assassination to such a drastic extent, there is a lot of things that have to also fall into place to make it not awful. Now, it does seem like they put the puzzle pieces in place, and while the numbers might not be there, they have all the tools available to them to try and tweak it and make it still feel good. The best way that I can describe this as like an overarching trend, I don't want to get bogged down in details, right? But as an overarching theme for the spec now, more of your energy is coming from the baseline regen and less of it is coming from Venomous Wound. You still have things like Dashing Scoundrel as well. Dashing Scoundrel is now a capstone, but it does the same thing. You're still getting energy from that. You have increased auto attack rate with the class talent, right? Swift Slasher. So there are other ways to get energy that will help augment this, but baseline regen has been buffed considerably. Venomous Wounds has been nerfed considerably. So the idea here, as a whole, is that you'll have more consistent energy, as in you'll have a similar amount of energy in single target that you do in AoE. AoE will have a little bit more, but not significantly more. And it's going to be much easier for them to go in and tune things based off that, because we're going to have very similar playstyles in both game modes, right? In both raids and M+. With that being said, this does mean that outside of the specified window of you have big regen, Venomous Wounds isn't giving that much, and so your energy overall right now is nerfed considerably. I've been telling people in general that going from like 100 to 0 is faster, like you run out of energy faster, but you also regain from 0 to 100 faster, and that's part of the Apex talents. We'll go over that a little bit later, but in general, you go 100 to 0 faster, you deplete it faster, but then you regen it faster. That's sort of the balance of all these things coming together. Deathmark, the main cooldown, has also been updated. This no longer duplicates Garrote, Rupture, and Lethal Poisons, so no lethal dose stacks or anything. It does do the same thing, however. You apply 2 poisons instead of 1, and they deal increased damage. The energy has instead been baked into Deathmark. You don't get doubled Venomous Wounds, for example. All of the interactions have been taken out, and it just doubles the damage. Doubling Lethal Poisons obviously still interacts with Dashing Scoundrel as well as Kingsbane, so that still is a thing that's staying in place. But Lethal Dose is kind of... Lethal Dose looking a little bit sketchy these days. I don't know if Lethal Dose is going to be any good, and it'll require some tuning to make it good, because it doesn't do anything during Deathmark anymore. They kind of cut it in half during Deathmark, so that's rough, but we'll see what happens. Then the other big change, 3 big changes in a row. Crimson Tempest has been updated. This is now a generator. So it deals damage within 10 yards, reduced beyond 5 targets, cool. Copies the longest Garrote and Rip, this should be Rupture, onto 2 other enemies, awards 1 combo point. Essentially what this is Fan of Knives. It's Fan of Knives, but it has Indiscriminate Carnage on it. So I believe there's a clip, if you let me go find it real fast. Luxthos was playing on the alpha, and there was some gameplay that I can show regarding this. A lot of people have been confused about it. So, if I could find the clip real quick. Yeah, so shout out Luxthos for doing this sort of alpha testing here. Now, you'll see that as he gets to Assassination, right, he applies Garrote and Rupture to this target, right, the main target. And then he's hovering Crimson Tempest here. This is new Fan of Knives. So he applies, you just watch, right? He applies Garrote. Normal Crimson Tempest doesn't do anything, but Garrote, Rupture, and now it copies everything, including the timing. So you'll see Crimson Tempests here. The timers are all the same. These are not full Garrotes. These are not full Ruptures. The timings copy from the longest that are available. So you will have to refresh bleeds, but you refresh bleeds on your main target. And then all your bleeds are going to end up falling off at roughly the same time, right? So he does it again. It doesn't refresh because the bleeds that are on the old targets are actually just as long as the bleed that's on the new target. So there's no refreshing that's happening here. And then once Garrote enters Pandemic, right, you can refresh Garrote, and then that's the new longest Garrote. You Crimson Tempest again. That Garrote's longer, so it refreshes on things that are shorter, right? And that's sort of the gameplay loop. So you can think of this as Indiscriminate Carnage light, except that you don't get a bunch of free bleeds. You simply cleave the bleeds off your main target, right? So there's no more mouse overing. There's no more target swapping required. None of that, because it will copy the bleeds from your main target. You just sit on your main target forever and just refresh the bleeds on that and spread it. And because it copies the longest duration and your main target is always the longest duration, unless you specifically go out of your way to target something else with, say, Garrote, and then move your Deathstalker's Mark, for example, unless you do something like that, you're just getting full benefits sitting on your main target. So that's important to note, right? Okay. Caustic Spatter has also been updated. This now is applied via Envenom or Kingsbane. No Rupture, no Mutilate, no nothing. You just Envenom, you have Caustic Spatter. Done, right? Perfect. Then you have Rapid Injection being buffed. This is now a 2-point talent. Rapid Injection is the Envenom during Envenom, right? Envenom damage while active. This was from the Amir Drisil tier set. Some people may remember that. That's what they added after Amir Drisil going into War Within. This was 10%. We never really played around it because it was too weak. Now it's 30% as a 2-point talent. So they tripled its effect, essentially. This is going to be a big part of our damage, playing around this properly and envenoming during your Envenom. Again, this sort of pooling, chaining your Envenoms, that concept is super strong, and they have a bunch of talents that interact with that. Flying Dagger's got some tuning. It's kind of whatever. Fatal Concoction is now a 2-point talent, so more poison damage. This got the same treatment as Rapid Injection. Poison damage is probably going up as an effect of Envenom's duration mattering more now. So Poison's probably also got a lot of numerical buffs. Poison Bomb is now 1-point talent, the 5% chance per combo point. So less Poison Bombs, but more Poisons, more Envenoms. This is another thing. Supercharge has been updated. Kingsbane Supercharges. Again, Shiv is not a button. Shiv is not a button. So keep that in mind. Kingsbane now does the Supercharger, and it supercharges 4 combo points, which means you can now have an 11 combo points in Venom. 11 combo points in Venom. Wowee! That's a lot of combo points. Envenom's self-buff no longer extends the duration when you're applied. People have been getting confused about this one. This is Pandemic only. This is not Envenom's buff like not refreshing if it has it. Some people have been comparing it to Mongoose Bite. I don't play Hunter, so I don't know what Mongoose Bite does, but it's not that. I can tell you it's not Mongoose Bite. This is simply Envenom, no longer Pandemics, which means you want to clip your Envenom just like you did during Emerdrasil, casting Envenom during the last seconds that it's active in order to get the next Envenom buff rolling, right? Okay, Throw and Precision also got some nerfs slightly. Fan and Knives range reduced. This is a weird one. I'm not sure about this because Crimson Tempest up here is 10 yards and Fan and Knives is 8. We'll have to see with Alpha, I guess. Some of these notes are a little bit strange, so whatever. Just do with it what you want. Path of Blood also is now 50 energy instead of 100, so we have a maximum of 250 energy rather than a maximum of 300. Sudden Demise also got a slight nerf. Motivated Murder is 30%. This is a new talent that they said up here is already 30%, but apparently a tuning note was added. Again, it's patch notes. They're a little weird. It's day 1 of alpha. Just be okay. They added Zoldyck and Mastery to a bunch of things. So now these tooltips on these and what they affect should be more clear. Zoldyck, for example, affects Deathstalker's Mark, Hunt Them Down, and the Tails coin. It didn't before, which is why Deathstalker had so much more execute damage than Fatebound. This should be fairly similar now again. But, you know, we love consolidating effects. This is great. Multiple auras, including weapon poisons, were flagged not to appear on enemy nameplates by default. So if you're playing a new rogue and you stumble upon my channel and you made it 37 minutes into this video, look at that! You don't need to worry about your nameplates anymore because it's not going to be full of a million effects. AP. And then they removed all of the stuff, right? So Vicious Venoms is gone. Twist the Knife is gone. No more doubled. Bone Spikes is also gone. Sanguine Blades is gone. Stealth effects like Master Assassin are gone. Carnage are gone. And then all the Shiv things. So Precision, Lightweight Shiv, Tiny Toxic Blade, those are all gone. One thing that they did not note, however, is that Improved Shiv is also gone. Improved Shiv used to be the thing that made Shiv deal or give you increased nature damage. That is not a thing anymore. So without Shiv giving increased nature damage and no RT or Precision, there's no point in casting Shiv anymore. That's what removed Shiv. Shiv is still there as a button that you can press to soothe, but it's no longer AoE. They single target soothe. It doesn't do any damage, doesn't give you any combat benefits. So, with all of those things mashed together, Shiv as a rotational button is gone. They deleted Shiv in your rotation. Okay. I'm just making sure I have all my things covered. But I think that's all the notes I have. Okay. Talk talent trees. So, this should look fairly similar to everyone. This is the class tree. Nothing really changed here. Obviously, there is the new talent here with Swift Slasher. So, that's what Acrobatic Strikes replaced. Swift Slasher is now here. Haste Double Dip. This is present for all 3 specs, right? So, Subtlety will also be double dipping Haste. Outlaw will also be double dipping Haste. Haste for everyone. Then you have Cold-Blooded Killer down here to replace Cold Blood. This is a passive now. Superchargers, all the same. Subterfuge, Without a Trace is all the same. This is all the same. T doesn't have Mastery anymore. This is just energy now, so feel free to let it auto-proc. It still auto-procs on its own. Deathstalker and Fatebound, for the record, we don't have these 3 talents. And the icons are messed up. We don't have the actual working talent trees yet. If we do have working talent trees, I might go over like some recommended builds and stuff that we're theory crafting at the start. But for now, these 3 don't exist, so we're still dealing with the original set of talents here. Clear the Witnesses, we again went over this. Fan and Knives damage increase, so this is now passive. Corrupt the Blood is now a passive Rupture increase. These are still all the same. Unshakable Drive now replaced Fatal Intent. Fatal Intent didn't do damage at all, ever, so seeing it gone is perfectly fine. And they ripped the Ambush and Mutilate damage out of the mark to put it into Unshakable Drive. Lingering Darkness and Symbolic Victory work the exact same way, except it's Kingsbane now, not Shiv. Ethereal Cloak, all the same. Momentum of Despair, all the same. It remains to be seen whether this is Fan of Knives and Crimson Tempest now, because Crimson Tempest is not a finisher anymore. And so it would be a little bit strange to see Fan of Knives and Crimson Tempest on this. Maybe they want that. This one, for example, is simply just Fan of Knives, even though Crimson Tempest does essentially the same thing. It generates the same amount of combo points, deals damage as well. So it remains to be seen whether these talents change in any way, or if it's just a one-to-one, like, Fan of Knives and Crimson Tempest both get these effects, right? As of right now, they haven't changed at all, which you could take as an indication that they're either staying or that they're placeholders while they work on changing some other stuff. I don't know. Also depends on the rest of the talents here. Then you have Darkest Night. Darkest Night, unchanged still, same thing. Fatebound, again, flip, right? Same thing. Mean Streak does the same thing. The utility thing is the same thing. Deal Fate is the same thing. Fate Intertwined is now a caustic spatter buff, increasing the nature damage. Edge Case is the same thing. Delivered Doom is now just a flat Envenom increase, so that's fine. Overflowing Purse now exists in place of the Cold Blood talent, so you have a chance to flip extra coins. With Destiny Defined now maybe looking like a decision that you actually have to make, Overflowing Purse might be just straight up better, but Destiny Defined, with its application chance of weapon poisons, now that we don't have Twist the Knife, could actually be good. And then you have Rush to the Inevitable. This is the energy gain. And of course, you have to rework the Lucky Coin, so you instead have the 15-second buff instead of a permanent buff. Cool. Now, going to the Assassination Tree. This is what it looks like now, right? And there's the Apex talents on the sides. I didn't go over the Apex talents before, specifically because of their placement on the tree mattering so much. They are not on the tree. However, you will most likely want them. And here is where the problems start to arise a little bit. There's a little bit of a concern for me in this regard. Because while the Apex talents are kind of cool, I guess, they are basically required for the core fundamental rotation. Because if you've noticed all of this Envenom pooling, Envenom chaining, whatever, there's been one thing missing, and that is, where's the rest of the energy? Right? Chaining and pooling Envenom is fine, but the number one complaint that people had about it was that pooling back your energy after a chain takes too long. There was even other theory crafters that would look at the Amirdrasil rotation, right, during Season 3 of Dragonflight, and they were like, I think the sim is broken because Assassination is just AFK for 10 seconds. Always be casting. There were theory crafters that went into Simulation Craft's Discord and were like, oh, look, the sim's bugged. It's not casting. And we had to be like, no, that's intended. And that's sort of where this is if it weren't for the Apex talents. The first one specifically. The first one says Envenom's damage is increased by 10%. When your Envenom bonus expires, gain 40% increased energy generation for 5 seconds. Gain additional 15% for each Envenom you used while Envenom's bonus was active up to 100% total. Now, the way I read this is that it's 40% base and then up to another 60% for 100% total. With that being said, 100% energy regeneration is crazy. You have to realize these are all multipliers. So you have 10 from Vigor, you have 30% from Motivated Murderer, and then you can get another 100% from this on top of your haste, right? So if you have, let's say, 10 baseline, Vigor is 1, Motivated Murderer is 3, they multiply together, so that's 13.1-ish. 13.2, right? Something like that. Then you have, say, 20% haste. That multiplies on top of that. So let's say 20% haste. That's another 2.6. Rounded a little bit. So we're at like 14-ish, right? 15, 16-ish energy. And now double it. That's how strong this is. This is the driving force that will command the pooling and spending rotation. Right? Like, Envenom Chaining lives and dies via this Apex talent, as far as I'm concerned. Now, they could do a bunch of numerical tuning to where, like, this isn't a make or break situation, but the effect itself goes such a long way rotationally and gameplay-wise that I feel like it's a pretty big misstep to have this as an Apex talent and not on the base tree. Presumably, we are going to take the Apex talents in all situations all the time because they're just going to be tuned in a way where they're really strong. But it does feel a little weird that our core gameplay is attached to these, like, talents floating off in space, rather than being, like, you know, fundamentally, like, right here. Like, what if Candy Strikes was moved down a row, and then this talent was right below Improved Poisons, like where it is right now? Like, Eternal Bleeding is here. Just put this one here, and then move this down one. That, like this should be accessible way easier and reinforce the Spec's identity early on without being a talent floating off in space. Aside from that, that is probably the only complaint you'll hear from me. This is a pretty good tree. There's some positioning questionable positioning on some talents that I would like to see changed. But this being an Apex talent when it seems so fundamental to the gameplay loop, this feels weird to me. This is a strange decision. The other Apex talents are also not nearly as cool. This one is just a flat mastery buff. Basically, nature and bleed damage is increased by 10%, 20%, 2-pointer. That's a mastery buff. It just increases mastery by 10%, 20%. That's really boring. I'm going to be honest. That's pretty boring. And then the last one, this is just flagellation again. After striking with Kingsbane, you rapidly strike the target 5 times over 1.5 seconds. I assume this does not GCD lock you, for the record. And it gives you nature damage, applies lethal poisons on your weapons, and generates a combo point. Now, this also has a couple ways that you could read into it. I'm going to zoom in so that you guys can read the tooltip while I yap. That's Shaman. This one. So, here's my issue with this. 5 combo points every minute, right? 5 strikes that each generate a combo point. 5 strikes in a minute does not sound that great. On top of that, even though it applies lethal poisons, right? Especially during Deathmark, this is 20 stacks on Envenom instantly, or 20 stacks on Kingsbane, sorry, instantly. That's really strong. But I don't know what purpose this serves other than stacking Kingsbane quickly. This forces you into Kingsbane in all situations, which probably healthy for the spec, but it just seems so weird to me why this isn't a talent, say, for example, under Kingsbane, or like a choice node with Regicide's Reward. Like, they have a talent that comes off of Kingsbane, but instead they hide this Kingsbane talent as an Apex talent behind these 3 points, right? You have the required gameplay point, 2 passive points, and then you have this. So again, the positioning on this is very strange. I don't really get it. And tuning-wise, there's so many things that could be tuned here, but it mostly comes down to, like, why are the lashes physical and nature damage? Like, I would assume this spatters, right? This is nature damage, so it should caustic spatter. So you hit Kingsbane, you do a bunch of damage. But why are we splitting it as physical and nature damage? Is that simply to try and, like, nerf the AoE component so you can tune the physical damage on its own? Like, it's just confusing, right? Like, this is just... This feels overcooked for what it's trying to do. Like, it feels like it's trying to do too many things at once. Now, if it were up to me, honestly, if this is an Apex talent, get rid of this and split this into two. Like, after striking with Kingsbane, randomly strike a target 5 times for 65 physical and 90 nature damage. Buff the hell out of that and put that here. And then you can keep this as each strike applies the lethal poisons on your weapons generates a combo point. Yeah, that makes more sense to me, I guess. I don't know. But the Apex talents in general, it feels a little strange. This feels a little weird to me. Now, it is good for rapidly stacking up your Kingsbane, especially during Deathmark, especially out of Deathmark as well when, you know, you're just pooling energy. But it's just weird, man. It's just weird. I don't know why we're splitting it up in physical and nature. I don't... Also, the names are all placeholder, right? These are all the same names. I don't know if that's what that's supposed to be, because they don't interact with each other at all, right? This isn't like implacable. Like implacable, if this is implacable, that's cool, but this has nothing to do with implacable. And this also has nothing to do with implacable. This is a Kingsbane buff, this is an Envenom buff. So, are they all the same name? Storm Unleashed? Like, I don't know, maybe they just don't have names. The Apex talents in general, just, I don't know what's happening with them. They sound cool in theory, but like, if you think about them for more than 5 seconds, it starts to be like, huh? What? What? I'm sorry? Why? Mastery buff? Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just gonna stop. I'm getting worked up again. Anyways, yeah, moving through the tree here, right? Crimson Tempest is still in the same spot. You will always take Motivated Murder, so Crimson Tempest is in a great spot, especially for M+. It's in the same spot it was. Throne Precision is behind it now, so you can actually skip this and go straight Crimson Tempest into Bloody Mess for Garrote and Rupture damage. Now, there is a slight problem here. Crimson Tempest, Garrote and Rupture damage, Seal Fate, this left side is really stacked. You have the additional combo point here. You have additional weapon poison. Deathmark, the all damage during Deathmark is active. Venomous Wounds is now down here. And then you go into Kingsbane. So just slaloming like this way, right? Where you go Murderous Intent, Crimson Tempest, Seal Fate, Deathmark, Finish the Job, Venomous Wounds, Kingsbane, Rapid Injection. Like, this slalom seems locked in. And I guess if you're in pure single target, you would take Internal Bleeding or Canny Strikes and just go this way instead. And that feels like the backbone of the entire tree at this point. The right side is a little bit sketch, I'm going to be honest. Right side of the tree feels a little awkward. You still have all the bleed stuff down here, like 20% rupture damage, Scent of Blood, which is required, Sudden Demise. But you can get there via Venomous Wounds now. So you can Venomous Wounds into Shrouded, into Scent of Blood. And then they hide Caustic Spatter behind Improved Garrote or Doomblade of all things. Like, Doomblade is up here? I don't know why you would ever go through Doomblade, because you would just go Path of Blood, Improved Garrote, Caustic Spatter, and just skip this? Unless Doomblade is doing, like, insane amounts of damage. Stuff is strange, man. Razor Wire is over here, which I guess is accessible because right after Improved Garrote, which you're probably taking in most situations. And then you have Caustic Spatter into Poison Bomb, and then Amplifying Poison over here? So you locked Amplifying Poison behind either Caustic Spatter or Lethal Dose, but then Deathmark doesn't have the duplication anymore, so Lethal Dose is weaker, right? So you don't really want Lethal Dose, but in single target situations, you want Amplifying Poison. So you either have to, like, take Lethal Dose in order to get to Amplifying Poison, or you have to take Caustic Spatter when you don't want to sometimes in order to get to Amplifying Poison. And then this choice node is either Fan of Knives damage or the weapon poison stuff. But the weapon poison stuff seems so much better to me, because it's just... like a little bit of Fan of Knives damage or applying poisons to like alternate targets. Like this whole like triangle diamond shape over here, this is strange to me. And that's kind of where I want to see some change, because like this doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the pathing is for this. Iron Wire is still around. It's behind Bloody Mess, which I think is thematically okay, but it is stuck sort of as a choice node to Sanguine Stratagem. Like if you're trying to get to Kingsbane or Blindside or Zoldyck, you have to go through Bloody Mess down to here. And so your options are take 2 points in Fatal Concoction, which you probably do in order to get to Venomous Wounds if you're not already going this way. Or take Sanguine Stratagem, which you basically always take because it's 5% increased damage on finishers. Or take Iron Wire, which means you don't take Iron Wire. So the point from Iron Wire has to come from somewhere else. And I don't see where the point comes from. Obviously, that's a tuning question, but as of right now, Iron Wire seems like a pretty big loss in terms of just raw sort of damage loss. And I don't know how to fix that. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. Maybe put it up here where Internal Bleeding is so that you can kind of use it to open the gate at the top. It's rough, but Iron Wire is going to be a lot of damage reduction. It's a really good effect. It also just reduces the damage you deal because you need to take a point from somewhere, and there's a lot of good points on the tree, so that sucks. Then, here's where the finishing move thing comes in with the increased crit strike points. This talent for being on this row sucks really bad. This talent for being on this row maybe sucks. But like compared to Zoldyck or Scent of Blood, this is terrible. This is awful. So numeric tuning will come to this, almost assuredly. There's no way it doesn't. Here's the choice node for the Envenom stuff. That is now locked. To get to Dragon Tempered Blades, you have to take one of these. Again, I think the Restore Combo Point one is going to be used earlier on, and then the damage you deal, the all damage effect, is going to be used later if you have enough haste or crit. But you need double points in Rapid Injection. So Rapid Injection is kind of the bread and butter, right? It's coming off of Venomous Wounds. You basically have to take this in order to get to Dragon Tempered Blades, which you will probably always take in order to get Kingsbane stacked. And then Dashing Scoundrel is now the capstone, which I guess it's cool. Maybe we see some tuning to Dashing Scoundrel, though, because Zoldyck, as it stands, I think is stronger than this, so it doesn't really feel like a capstone right now. Like, Kingsbane is definitely more of a capstone than Dashing Scoundrel. The numbers are all very weird. It just, you see why I said that I'm not going to really care about the numbers, but, like, position-wise, this looks a little strange. And like, now you get it, because, like, this is a weird decision. It's a weird decision, but they had to put Regicide's reward behind it, I guess, so. Pathing, based on, like, the traditional tuning that we know of on live, looks very strange. That's all I'm saying. Tuning will come, and I'm sure this will make sense in, like, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, but as of right now, this is a little bit of a jumbled sort of bag of everything. And that's fine. So let me show you how these trees would work. We don't have working talent calculators yet, so this does need to be a little bit ghetto. And I do need to kind of draw with a little Microsoft Paint thing. So this is always take because you have to. And then you probably always take these. This is the increased energy regen, the increased max energy regen. And then you have to open the gate after the third row, I believe. Like after this row. You either take the crit internal bleeding stuff here, or you take Improved Garrote, or you take Crimson Tempest. Now, off of those choices alone, I believe that you probably always take Improved Garrote. So you're probably always going this way, and then you might take Internal Bleeding for single target, you might take the crit for AoE, but you probably take this, and then M+, you would simply go the other way, right? And I think that would open the gate. If not, you would take, you know, one of these, obviously. Now, you have to remember, this guy down here is not Sanguine Blades anymore. It's Doomblade. This is Doomblade. So we're going straight down to Caustic Spatter for AoE. Otherwise, there's a decision to be made whether we take the increased route duration or we take Doomblade. Maybe we take Doomblade. Seal Fate is a must-take, though. So we're going for sure Seal Fate. If it's in single target, we're going this way on it, obviously. Bloody Mess is probably an always-take situation. So again, this way, or we go this way and M+. Deathmark always take, so Seal Fate, Deathmark always take. I would assume the 10% is an always take. Venomous Wounds is an always take. And then Kingsbane is probably always take. Rapid Injection is an always take. And then from here, we got some decisions a little. So either we can go down this road, take Caustic Spatter, Poison Bomb, or Caustic Spatter, secondary poisoning for like AoE stuff, or we can go this way if we don't want AoE and take Lethal Dose. So because I have Crimson Tempest selected here, I'm just going to do a little bit of AoE. I'm going to go, okay, Caustic Spatter. Poison Bomb, whatever, we're an M+, Amplifying Poison. And now we take all of this stuff. All of this stuff. 20% Rupture damage here, as well as the 15% here is a lot of Rupture damage. Scent of Blood is still required, so that's Scent of Blood right there, right? And then this is just generic bleed damage, so that's probably still good. Shrouded Suffocation, also probably still good, so we're going to take that. And then from here, it's probably just a generic, like, get Dashing Scoundrel, and then get Dragon Tempered Blades. So this would be, like, the structure of something. With leftover points, you're taking the Apex Talents, which you're probably always taking regardless. And then it's, like, 7 combo points. And from there, you know, you have maybe 1 or 2 points left maximum. In which case, maybe the crit, maybe the weapon poison, you know, just generic stuff. So again, you can see here, Iron Wire, not really in an accessible spot, especially if we have to put 4 points into these Apex Talents here, and we only get 3 additional, right? So, we'll see how it shakes out. As of right now, this is sort of the idea that I have. In single target, obviously, we can go back and sort of speed run through this. Single target you take here and here. Do the same thing going this way, taking all of this stuff, right? So you take all of this stuff, you take Crimson Tempest for sure. You probably take the poison stuff into here, and then you probably also take Bloody Mess into the extra combo points. And then all the Apex Talents, of course. And then here you have your decisions, right? This is sort of the base structure, and now it's kind of a tuning problem. If Improved Garrote is good, Shrouded Suffocation is probably also good. If Improved Garrote is not good, you'd go Doomblade. Maybe you'd grab the Haste effect here, the Crit effect here, and Lethal Dose into Amplifying Poison. This is sort of always a lock-in, like these 3 points here, sort of always a lock-in. You always want Amplifying Poison, especially with how important Envenom is. And then, like, if Rupture's tuned well, you might take the Rupture Talents. If Rupture's not tuned well, then you're kind of running out of points, but you get the gist, right? Like, you don't take Crimson Tempest here, you don't take Caustic Spatter, but the rest is sort of similar. You still want all of the Envenom stuff, all of the Kingsbane stuff, all of the Dashing Scoundrel, but you skip out the bleed stuff here. I'll do this in, like, blue. You skip all of the bleed stuff here, you skip all the Crimson Tempest stuff here, and all the Fan of Knives stuff here. Caustic Spatter, Poison Bomb, like this stuff gets skipped, and then maybe this stuff gets skipped here. So you skip kind of the blue stuff if you're doing single target. If you're doing M+, you kind of want the blue stuff. That's generally the vibe, and then I don't know, again, where Iron Wire is supposed to fit in. That is sort of the eternal question. And it'll be a payoff that you need to think about, but a lot of people, I assume, will not be happy about having to have a payoff. So, then, rotationally, I have 2 things. One for single target, one for AoE, well, one for generic. This is your AoE rotation now in Mythic Plus in AoE. You always maintain your bleeds on your main target, and then you spread them using Crimson Tempest, right? Fan of Knives. So you Crimson Tempest, spread the bleeds as needed. This is your combo point generator. Fan of Knives does more damage than Crimson Tempest, but Crimson Tempest spreads your bleeds. So if you don't need to spread bleeds, Fan of Knives. Otherwise, you're just doing the Envenom chain and you're pooling. You only have 2 cooldowns now, Kingsbane and Deathmark. You're pressing them on cooldown. Deathmark is an all damage increase. Kingsbane probably does a decent chunk of damage now, looking at sort of the interactions that are coming with it. So you'll always want to cast them on cooldown at the start pools on the biggest target. Shiv doesn't do anything. Shiv is deleted. So reminder, Shiv does not do any damage. Then Vanish, there is no Indiscriminate Carnage, there is no Master Assassin. You're only doing this for improved growth, so this is just a little bit of extra damage, but it is not required in any way to make the spec work. Just a little bit of bonus on top, and you can hold it for certain situations if you'd so wish. I assume Crimson Tempest will spread the improved growths as well. So, as you're spreading into a big pack, like as you're pulling a big pack, you vanish for the improved growth and then spread that. Cool. Now, for all those questions of what is chaining, what is pooling? Envenom chaining. You have a burn phase and you have a pool phase. This green bar represents the timer on Envenom. So this is assuming 5 comp points Envenom. So going into a burn phase, you're going to Envenom once, get your buff. You're going to mutilate twice to get to 5 combo points. Then you're going to wait Envenom on the last second. Repeat the process. Mutilate twice, wait, Envenom on the last second. You're going to do this for a total of 5 Envenoms, including the initial one, or when you run out of energy. The reason for that being, right, implacable. This is the 100% damage increase, right? Or not a damage increase, energy increase. So you gain 40 baseline, but then if you cast 4 more Envenoms, you get 60% additional. That's the 100% total. So in general, the initial Envenom, then you get 1 stack, 2 stack, 3 stacks, 4 stacks. That's your 100%, you stop. That's the idea right now. So you have a total of your initial Envenom plus 4 more to max out Implacable, or you run out of energy before that, in which case you build your combo points, you wait until you have a bunch of energy, and then you repeat. You go Envenom, do the combo again, rinse and repeat. This is going to be true in single target as well as M+, right? In AoE as well, you want to kind of be doing this because Venomous Wounds is now so weak and reduced in AoE, right? 4 energy now, reduced for bleeds beyond the first. So, keep that in mind. This is going to be something that you want to do in AoE most likely as well, because you won't be overflowing on energy. Checking the notes. I think I got everything that I wanted to talk about, at least right now. So my overall impressions. I already said that I was pretty positive in the overview part, but I want to kind of double down on that and say that I think this is a really good change for Assassination. Having energy be a clear gameplay loop now, instead of just kind of, yeah, it's sort of there, but not really, and always having pooling be like 0.5% or 1% of a DPS gain, like, this now clearly states, hey, you want to cast Envenoms during Envenom, and when you can't do that, you will lose damage. That is a core fundamental thing now in the spec, and I like that they doubled down on that and decided to make a clear message in that regard. The concerns I have are mostly Apex talent related, but in general, I think simplifying down the rotation is a good thing. Even though Assassination has been fairly simple in my eyes for a while now, I realize that I am biased in that opinion, because I am the theory crafter, I am the guide writer. A large part of my life is spent understanding and optimizing this spec. So to me, things that feel simple might be really challenging to a lot of other players, especially newer players and players who might be adverse to Rogue in general. And I understand that is my bias coming into this, right? So I think that as a whole, with the entire community, removing a lot of those min-maxes, removing a lot of the Shiv conditions because Shiv isn't a thing anymore, I think that's really good for the game. Like before we had dry Shivs during Lingering Darkness with Deathstalker, for example, right? You had all these different Shiv timings. Like double Shiv during Deathmark, Shiv the last 8 of Kingsbane, and then on Fatebound you only get 1 Shiv, so you have to Shiv the last 8 again, but on Deathstalker you get the dry Shiv. How do you Shiv an AoE if you have Supercharger? How do you Shiv an AoE if you don't have Supercharger? If you have Kingsbane, don't have Kingsbane. Arterial Precision, don't have Arterial Precision. Like, all of these things made for a really complicated button, and even just thinking about it off the top of my head, I cannot recite all the Shiv rules off the top of my head. I just don't remember all of them. The Sims have 12 lines of just Shiv conditions. Like 12 different conditional lines of when to cast Shiv, based on talents, based on AoE or single target. So I can't remember all of those. Deleting Shiv from your rotation is a bold move. Assassination has kind of dealt with Shiv or Toxic Blade as a button since Legion. But I think with how bloated the button has become over time, and how much sort of nuance there is in how you're playing around it with each talent and stuff, it did get a little bit of a bloat. And so I think in general, streamlining it is a good move. That being said, however, there is a point where streamlining too much is a bad thing, right? I don't think Assassination has quite gotten there yet, but I am cautious because Blizzard is putting a lot of their eggs into one basket, and that is the Envenom basket. This whole thing with Envenom chaining, if this doesn't work out, the Spec is screwed. I'm gonna say that very plainly. If Blizzard does not get the Envenom chaining correct, and it does not feel good, there is no fallback. Like, the Spec will either feel good because chaining feels good, or it will feel bad because chaining feels bad. There is no alternative. Bleed spreading isn't a thing anymore because Crimson Tempest does it automatically. The difference in energy in AoE and in single target is not that major anymore because Venomous Wounds got nerfed so hard. All of your damage in AoE now comes generally from Caustic Spatter, unless they make a giant step towards buffing Rupture and Garrote. Crimson Tempest itself doesn't do damage anymore. Sanguine Blades isn't a thing anymore, that's gone. So, comparing to a bleed build from this season, just removing Crimson Tempest and Sanguine Blades is already losing you like 20 to 25% of your damage. Right off the rip, you're losing like 25% of your damage, because those buttons simply don't exist anymore. And that has to be compensated somehow. They could compensate that through Rupture and Garrote, or what seems to be happening is they're compensating through Caustic Spatter through a mixture of hero talents, Envenom, and Kingsbane. And again, that is a lot of things riding on Envenom and Kingsbane being successful. If the rotation around Envenom and Kingsbane doesn't feel good, they don't have a second option, right? And so I have a paranoid, paranoid fear, right? I have this paranoid fear in the back of my head that if the expansion goes live and they don't hit the mark with this, the entire expansion will just see Rogue suffering, because it needs to be there, or it needs big changes in order to get there. And so the same way that, like, you don't see a lot of changes to Rogue after, like, one set, like the 11.5 stuff that made Supercharger from Echoing Reprimand, like that rework, that one patch was the only kind of big changes that we saw to Rogue that expansion. if the same thing is to repeat in Midnight and we don't see like big changes, this needs to work the first time. This needs to work day one of the expansion. That's tough. That's really tough. And Blizzard has kind of painted themselves into a corner. They've backed themselves into a corner on how they want to tune the spec, because everything is riding on Envenom and Caustic Spatter. Those are your two buttons. Well, Caustic Spatter isn't a button, but those are your two tools, and those need to function, right? That is my paranoid fear. The Apex talents as well. I don't know what the intent of the Apex talents is. I don't know how they work on other classes and other specs. And I know that some of them aren't even active right now, like Subtlety doesn't have Apex talents. So there might be a lot of changes going on with those. But the way it stands right now, having an Apex talent that targets the core fundamental rotation of a spec feels weird to me. They should be augmenting the rotation, and they should be like zeroing in on a certain thing, like Envenom. Like, that's fine. Like, you can add things, you can tack things onto Envenom or tack things onto Kingsbane or whatever. But having like a flat mastery buff as one of your Apex talents, or having like the removal of downtime during this like burn and pool phase, which is supposed to be the core rotation of Assassination, having that be an Apex talent feels weird. Like, it already feels like you're putting a band-aid over like a clearly missing part of the core spec, which again is concerning. That I don't like that. If that's the intent and you just always have Apex talents forever, then like I guess, but I don't know. Anyways, those are my thoughts. I am very happy in general to see these changes. I think like the AoE rotation here, simplifying it down, this is going to be really good for a lot of people who were confused about like how many bleeds, where bleeds, whatever, blah, 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 blah. But we'll see how things shake up. We'll see how things get tuned and changed around. And yeah, cautiously optimistic. I hope you guys are happy with the remix of revamp remix, whatever you want to call it. Have a good one. Let me know in the comments below. Also, I will be streaming a lot of this, and when I get alpha, I will make another video announcing the streams. We had a very, very nice stream day one with all the announcements. There was 200 people all chatting, having a good time. So come stop by. It's not going to be as busy, but you can still say hi to me. So bye, have a good one. I hope you guys are all excited. Have a good one. Bye.